Another one, last one for this week, while you see this video. Okay, last one is, what color is the wind? It's blue. Okay, now to complete the square, that's what we're talking about today. It's an algebraic technique, and it's a process that helps us to get a perfect square. Now, don't forget, if I'm talking about a perfect square, it's a plus b in brackets all squared. And it kind of gives us this a squared plus 2ab plus b squared kind of thing, if you didn't remember. And then if it was a minus b all squared, it'll give you a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. Okay. Now, just don't forget, whenever you get a minus b squared, it's not a squared minus b squared or a squared plus b squared. It's this part here that most people forget. So just be aware of that and don't forget it. Okay. Now, it can be used to solve quadratics, which we will use, but usually it's used for graphing circles, which we'll do in the very near future. Okay. Now, just as a quick little refresher, your perfect squares. I'm going to expand a couple of these out and just show you how they work. Remember, I'm going to treat that as if that was a, that was b. So remember that a plus b squared gives us a squared plus 2ab plus b squared, and I'll show you how that works. So the first term is a, it becomes, or first term is x in this case, so it will be x squared. And then I'm going to go plus 2 times a times b. So I'm going to go plus 2 times x times 2. So that's a and b. So that would give me 4x. And then plus my last term, which is b, plus my b squared, that gives me 4. Okay, now in the same way, if I do this one, it'll be my first term squared, which is x squared. And because it's minus, I know I'm going to minus 2 lots of x times -9. So it's going to be, or x times 9. In this case, it's going to be, take away 18x. And then it's going to be plus the square of the last number. 9 squared is 81. Okay, so in the same way, if I went the other way around, I've got x squared plus 12x plus 36. I can see this one would be x plus 6 squared, because 6 times 6 gives me 36, and then 2 times 6 times x gives me 12x. And this one here, I can see is going to be 2x plus 1 all squared, because I can see that 2x times 2, or 2x squared, gives you your 4x squared. Your 1 times 1 gives you your 1 squared. And then 2 times 2x times 1 gives you that middle term, 4x. Okay, so that's just how perfect squares look and how they work. Now let's actually do this, completing the square. Now I want you to almost get it into your head. Whenever you see completing the square, I want you to immediately think halve it and square it. Halve it and square it. I'll explain what the it is. So when I talk about it and it, I'm really talking about the term in front of the x. Okay, so not the term in front of the x squared, not the constant term, it's just the term in front of the x, because that's going to help us out. And I'll show you what I mean. First step, step number 1 is I like to move constant to the other side. So when I move the constant to the other side, it just means I'm going to do this. X squared plus 4x equals 2 minus 1. So I've minused the constant to the other side. Yep. Okay, now the next step is halve it square. And so in this case here, I can see the thing that I'm halving and squaring is positive 4. So in this case here, I'm going to plus 2 squared, but if I do that to one side, I also need to do that to the other side. So this is the key part. This is completing the square. I'm adding in a number out of nowhere, out of the thin of the blue sky. I don't know if that even makes sense. But I'm going to add it. If I add it to one side, I'm going to add it to the other side. And technically, I've done nothing. I've just kind of manipulated my equation. Now, the beauty of this is once you've halved it and squared it, add to both sides. Once you do that, I'm just going to move this so it looks a little bit more next to each other. Now, once you've done that, what you want to do is now you can factorize. Okay, now to make your life easy when you factorize, it generally becomes whatever was in the bracket is what becomes that term there. Okay, and if you want, you can double check x squared, x plus 2, so all squared should be x squared plus 4x plus 4, which it is. But then let's clean up the other side. What's minus 1 plus 4? That just becomes 3. Now, the way that we would continue solving for this is now we take the square root of both sides, and I'll label this fourth step as just solve. Yep. And I'm going to write factorize the perfect square. Okay, that's the whole idea of completing the square. I want a perfect square. So now there's my perfect square. And then at this point, I solve. How do I solve for x? Well, I need to square root both sides. If I square root 3, I get the square root of 3. And I get the plus minus of it. Don't forget, anytime you take a square root, you should get the positive and negative value. And then my square disappears on the left-hand side. And then to solve for my x, it would just be plus minus the square root of 3, and I'm going to minus the 2. I'm happy with that to be my solution. Okay, if I wanted to, I could write them out as 2 separate things, or even if you put it in your calculator, you'll get a disgusting answer. But this is going to be your exact answer. Okay. Again, we're going to try it again for this one here. The only difference is it needs to be monic. So that means that 2 is not going to fly. So what I need to do is, let's go bit by bit. The first thing I'm going to do is move the constant over. So I've got 2x squared plus 8x. I'm going to leave a slight gap. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide everything through by 2. So if I divide everything through by everything through by 2, everything gets divided by 2. So 2x squared becomes x, 8x becomes 4x, and negative 3 becomes negative 3 on 2. I'm not going to worry about the fraction. Let's just keep going on. Now I'm going to halve it and square it. So I can see that there's my plus 4. So I'm going to halve that, which is 2, and then I'm going to square it. So I'm going to plus 2 squared here, plus 2 squared there. And from here, if you remember, I'm going to factorize the left-hand side, which becomes x plus 2 squared. And then the right-hand side, I'm going to figure this out, minus 3 on 2 plus 4, which is not a very nice number. Let's see if I can clean this up a little bit. Minus 3 on 2 plus 8 on 2. This you can put in the calculator, but I can see that that's going to just be 5 on 2. And I've got my x plus 2 going on here. Now to continue on a little bit more, now at this point, I'm trying to solve for x, so I would just take the square root. So x plus 2 equals the square root of 5 on 2. And I get the plus and minus because I'm taking the square root of something. And then I would minus 2. Just minus 2 to the other side. And that there would be my 2 solutions. One where I take the positive root 5 on 2, and one where I take the negative root 5 on 2. Hope that helps. That is it. Good luck with completing the square, and I'll see you next time. By the way, you should like and subscribe. Okay, bye-bye.